When you think of Jerusalem, it's a city that feels like it exists as much in faith and prophecy as it does on any map. And right at its heart is the Old City, wrapped in these ancient walls and its 8 legendary gates. But here's the thing, they aren't just stone entrances. They are silent witnesses to a story that has literally shaped our world.
So, how is that possible? How can simple stone gates hold so much power? How can they possibly tell a story of faith, of war, of deep spiritual longing that resonates so profoundly within Judaism, Christianity, and Islam? Well, that's the big question we're diving into.
To really get it, you've got to stop thinking of them as just openings in a wall. Instead, think of them as portals. Each one leads to a totally different facet of the city's soul.
And that right there is the key. Each gate we're about to look at isn't just a place. It's an access point to a huge idea. We're talking everything from humility and repentance all the way to unwavering faith and the hope for a future that's still to come. So let's jump in, and I think the best way to do this is to explore some of the most significant gates by looking at them in pairs. Because when you see them side by side, it really brings out the incredible contrast they represent, all within this one tiny, sacred space. This first contrast, it just nails the city's dual nature. On one hand, you've got the Dung Gate. Now, despite its humble name, it's actually a gate of purification. It offers the most direct path to the Western Wall, the holiest site of prayer in Judaism. And then you have the Damascus Gate. It's grand, it's monumental, it's buzzing with energy. It is the commercial pulse of the city, sacred and mundane, living right next to each other. Okay, now the story starts to stretch across time itself. The Zion Gate is literally etched with the past. I mean, you can still see the bullet scars from the 1948 war. It's this raw, physical reminder of trauma, but also of return. And in the starkest contrast imaginable, you have the Golden Gate, which faces the future. It's been sealed shut for centuries because both Jewish and Christian traditions believe the Messiah will one day enter through it. It's a prophecy just waiting. Here, we get to see two really distinct expressions of faith. There's the Lion's Gate, and a little fun fact, if you look closely, the carvings are actually leopards, not lions. This gate marks the start of the Via Dolorosa, which is the path of Christ's suffering. So it symbolizes immense courage and martyrdom. Then you've got the Jaffa Gate, which was historically the main entrance for Christian pilgrims coming in from the west. It represents a journey of devotion, an open invitation to the faithful from all over the world. And finally, let's look at the contrast between the ancient and the modern. Herod's Gate is one of the quieter, less dramatic entrances. It really represents the everyday life of the city that's just been humming along for centuries. But the new gate, totally different story. It was built in 1889, and it was a very deliberate act of modernization, designed specifically to connect the ancient city with the growing modern world right outside its walls. Okay, so we've seen the gates, but why? Why do they matter so much? Their significance, at the end of the day, comes from what they were built to protect. To get that, we have to look inside the walls, to the city's absolute theological core. Because right at the very center of Jerusalem, on what we now call the Temple Mount, there once stood the first and then later the second temples. And these were not just buildings. They were considered the physical dwelling place of God on earth. They were the absolute heart of ancient Israel's spiritual universe. And look at this timeline. We're talking about a massive span of history. The first temple, built by Solomon, stood for almost 400 years before the Babylonians destroyed it. Then, after decades in exile, the second temple was rebuilt on the very same spot, and it stood for nearly 600 more years before the Romans came and destroyed it. For almost 1,000 years, temple worship defined the city. Now, it's absolutely crucial to understand the difference between the two. The first temple was totally unique. It's where the Ark of the Covenant was housed. Its destruction was this profound national trauma that led to the Babylonian exile. The second temple, the one that Jesus would have known, well, its destruction became another one of those massive turning points. It ended the entire system of animal sacrifice and completely reshaped Judaism into the faith we know today, one centered on prayer and text. But the story doesn't just stop in the year 70 CE with a pile of rubble. No way. The destruction of the temples didn't erase their importance. Instead, it transformed it, creating this powerful, complex, and lasting legacy for 3 of the world's major religions. So here's how that legacy basically plays out. For Judaism, the temple was the center of God's presence on earth.
Today, prayer is focused on the hope for a future third temple, and the Western Wall serves as that direct physical link to the past. For Christianity, the temple is where Jesus taught, and its destruction fulfilled his prophecies. Jesus himself is now seen as the true temple. And for Islam, the site, known as the Haram al-Sharif, is revered as the location of the Prophet Muhammad's night journey, which makes it the third holiest site in the entire faith.
All right, so let's circle all the way back to where we started, the gates. Because they aren't just relics of some past story. They're symbols of a story that is very much still being written, one filled with hope, division, and powerful expectation.
There's this one quote that I think just says it all perfectly. Walking through these gates is like stepping right into the story itself, a layered story of holiness, of loss, and of the profound hope of one day returning. And that, of course, brings us back to the most potent symbol of all, the Golden Gate. It remains sealed shut, a constant, physical, stone reminder of a future that has not yet arrived, a divine story whose final chapter is still waiting to be written. So at the end of the day, the gates of Jerusalem are so much more than history. They're really a living question. Standing both open to the world and sealed by prophecy, they ask every one of us what it means to wait, to remember, and to have faith in a future we can't yet see. So what story do they tell you?